Hey everyone, this evening we delve into the sophisticated, disciplined, and often merciless realm of feudal Japan. This is a land characterized by samurai honor, rigid codes, and exceedingly harsh consequences. It boasts cherry blossoms, exquisite poetry, and an everyday routine that would likely overwhelm most of us before noon. Before settling in, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, only if you truly appreciate what I create here. I would love for you to share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always intriguing to see who's joining us from different corners of the globe. Now, let's dim the lights and perhaps turn on a fan for a gentle background noise. Together, let's embark on this evening's journey. In feudal Japan, you don't rise and select your destiny. Instead, it's predetermined by your lineage, blood ties, and ancestors long gone. Your societal role isn't optional, it's an inescapable decree. If you're born into a samurai family, congratulations. You're tasked with the care of the sword, bow, and mastering the countless ways to present yourself before your lord correctly. However, if you're born a peasant, welcome to a lifetime of mud and toil. The same fate awaits your descendants. There's no resume to present. Your options are limited to being a samurai, peasant, artisan, or merchant, and once assigned, there's no relocation. Climbing the social ladder isn't just looked down upon, it's actively punished. In feudal Japan, you don't ascend, you bow. Things get even more complex with the ETA, the outcasts. These are the individuals dealing with death, butchers, executioners, and leather workers. Society requires them but simultaneously chooses to ignore their existence. They function like societal ghosts, with essential roles wrapped in obscurity. Even within distinct classes, the hierarchy remains rigid. Imagine being a merchant. It sounds respectable, right? You have money, but in feudal Japan, you're close to the bottom. Why? Because you earn money without physical labor, deemed morally questionable. Yes, you're too effective to gain respect. Meanwhile, the peasants are overtaxed on rice, leaving them vulnerable to starvation. If they hide rice for survival, that's treason. Executions occur frequently. While samurai possess honor, they're perpetually anxious about displeasing their lord, ancestors, or even their clothing. Women. You don't even get to inquire. Regardless of your class, your freedom is limited by your father's expectations. You marry who you're told, comply with authority, and if fortunate, gain permission to learn poetry. So, yes, you're born into a role with a predetermined script thrust upon you, regardless of your consent or desire to act. It's a life of elegance, poetic grace, yet brutally constraining. Before you've had breakfast, you realize that while the life in feudal Japan may appear grimy, they took cleanliness extremely seriously. It bordered on ritualistic, which sounds appealing until faced with its reality during winter. Your day starts not in a relaxing bathroom but at a frigid stone basin, drawing icy water from a well or stream. There's no heating, no negotiation. You splash cold water on your face and arms, shivering as if your ancestors reprimand you for existing. Soap. Only if you're wealthy, and even then, it resembles a concoction made from ash or rice bran, far from pleasant. In the countryside, the local communal bathhouse becomes the hygiene hub if you're lucky enough to have one. These centers are heated by firewood, packed with locals. And by communal, I mean there is zero privacy. You wash next to your neighbors, boss, in-laws, or your landlord while attempting to avoid awkwardness. Cleanliness is paramount, and soiling the bathwater is social suicide. If you're not near a bathhouse, you clean yourself as best as you can. You might use salt for your teeth or twigs for nails. Your clothes are aired regularly, not for style, but due to the spiritual and social shame associated with being unclean. For samurai, the pressure to uphold cleanliness intensifies. Your lord may inspect you any time. Dirty nails. Dishonor. Wrinkled robes. Disrespect. Too much odor. You might not stand back up. Women, of course, are expected to embody both the fragrance of cherry blossoms and exemplary discipline. Bathing is almost ritualistic. Skincare is done with precision, while hairstyles require hours of intricate maintenance. You might be working in a rice field, but, undeniably, you must look dignified. Yes, feudal Japan was cleaner than most might imagine, yet that cleanliness demanded endless grooming and a persistent awareness of judgment regarding your personal hygiene. Now, let's say you've been born into the warrior class as a samurai. Sounds great, right? Elegant swords, beautiful silk robes, and poetic jewels under cherry blossoms. However, let's discuss the reality. Being a samurai isn't merely about wielding a katana while shouting for honor. It's about never making a mistake. Your life revolves around Bushido, a warrior code so stringent that even your ancestors would feel anxious. Your existence isn't your own. It serves your daimyo, your lord. His commands are absolute, his moods dictate everything. Your duty is to dedicate such unwavering loyalty that you prefer a tragic death over a slight disappointment. Disobedience. That's dishonor. Failure. Dishonor. Even raising your voice at an inappropriate time is dishonor. Squinting sideways at the wrong individual during a tea ceremony. You guessed it, dishonor. This isn't something one merely shrugs off. Rather, it's expected to be atoned for, often at the price of your own life through seppuku, a ritualistic suicide for disgraced samurai. Kneel, draw a short blade, and end there. It sounds extreme, but it was not uncommon. It was a long-standing, respected tradition to preserve dignity. Mess up severely, and your lord may offer you a blade and a quiet space with, you know how to handle this. Besides that, samurai are expected to train continuously in swordsmanship, archery, riding, strategy, writing, and poetry, all while maintaining a flawless posture and an expression of relentless obligation. Any laughter that's too boisterous. Unrefined. Exhibiting fear, weakness, or emotion. Shameful. Everything you possess must be impeccable. Your clothing, your sword, and your behavior should generate discomfort in others due to your honorable demeanor. If you ever unsheathe your sword in anger unjustifiably, demean a higher authority, or lose a duel, it's not just losing, you lose everything. Being a samurai isn't about glory, it's about punctuality in following duties, and surviving each day without error. Suppose you weren't born as a samurai. No sword, no prose, and no dramatic self-inflicted punishment awaits you. That's good news. The bad news? You're a peasant. This means your whole life consists of dirt, sweat, backaches, and state-mandated rice deliveries. You wake at sunrise not due to some inherent connection with nature, but because you can't afford the land tax. Also, your thatched dwelling has neither doors nor windows, and someone's goat just stepped on your bed mat. Breakfast means, if you're fortunate, a bowl of rice porridge accompanied by last week's pickled mystery. If you're unlucky, imagine convincing yourself you aren't hungry while tasting river water. Then it's off to the rice fields. They might come across serene in travel documentaries, but they're merely mud pits crafted to gradually drain your spirit over 12 hours. You plant, weed, and hope today isn't the day of a bandit raid. When night falls, you limp home only to find one of your oxen is missing, with the village headman waiting to discuss your grain shortfall. Taxes are relentless. You aren't paid in coins, you pay in rice. Your family consumes what little remains, which is hardly sufficient following a bad harvest, or worse, if your lord's nephew mistakenly galloped across your land during a military exercise. Want to complain about your plight? That's adorable, you can't. Speaking out invites a whipping, exile, or becoming an uppercase corpse. Should you be exceptionally fortunate, you could reach village elder status, wherein people still ignore your counsel but might ask for it before disregarding it entirely. Remember, you aren't even legally allowed to leave your village without permission. Effectively, you become a rice-based prisoner with seasonal ankle conditions. Festivals do occur occasionally. You get inebriated on sake, dance in circles, and try not to dwell on the fact that planting season starts in just 4 days. So indeed, you are the economic backbone, the reason samurai have meals, and the person society neglects. You don't earn holidays because feudal Japan believes in relentless labor, generational agony, and maintaining extremely low expectations. Hungry? Of course, you've been tilling, planting, perspiring, while politely failing to die since before dawn. It's time to eat. Yet in feudal Japan, meals center around survival. It's about simplicity, sustaining life, and evading fishbone complications in the presence of your in-laws. If you're a peasant, your diet primarily consists of rice. Rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. If you're fortunate, it's real rice. If not, you get barley masquerading as rice. Occasionally, you might get a turnip or two, and some pickled radishes if fortune smiles. Meat is a luxury reserved for daimos, or perhaps for that chicken that looked at you weirdly before vanishing. Fish might occasionally make an appearance, as dried, salted, and nearly sharp enough to be a dental file. Soup generally consists of miso if you can refer to hot salt water with a few leaves as soup. Is it flavorful? Certainly, in the same manner that seawater is hydrating. Samurai, however, win access to better food but eat after their lord, his guests, and anyone he wishes to impress. So you end up getting cold rice, cold soup, while the joy of merely watching others eat while pretending to be honored floods your spirit. Moreover, everything is seasonal, not out of trendiness, but due to the absence of refrigeration, global supply chains, and if you weren't busy harvesting it yourself, it simply doesn't exist. In winter, well, nature essentially suggests fasting. If you suffer from food poisoning, medical care is rudimentary. The best local remedy is to lie down and think fondly of your ancestors. You either recover or join them. Food theft. A grave crime. Steal even a bowl of rice, and the punishment isn't merely a light reprimand, it's a public lesson on why touching a daimyo's daikon is unacceptable. As for tea, it exists, but not in the form you're envisioning. The tea ceremony signifies a complex performance revolving more around manners, etiquette, and existential humility than genuine thirst. So yes, meals are a ceremonial affair, maintained in silence and respect, but generally bland, small, and invariably include at least one chewy mystery item. And certainly, you cannot complain, unless you wish your next meal to be served through your nostrils. Having finished your small bowl of what might be fish soup, someone may say something absurd. Maybe your lord mutters a bad haiku, or perhaps your village elder misquotes somebody. Maybe your neighbor claims his cow can predict the weather. For one reckless moment, you might think of correcting them. Don't. In feudal Japan, sharing your opinion is a dangerous liability. Free speech is non-existent. It's a fast track straight to disgrace, exile, or a sudden termination by decapitation. The social hierarchy is rigid, where every word carries enormous weight. Step out of your class, and you become compromised. Critiquing a superior. Considered insolent. Misjudging a joke. That's bordering treason. Even among families, you need to tread lightly. A son won't interrupt his father. A wife won't question her husband, and no one dares challenge the daimyo unless they wish to hastily explore the afterlife via sword. Samurai receive training in speaking with exquisite calm, regardless of how infuriated they might feel. A sharpened tongue is far worse than a dull blade. It's improper. It's perilous and could force someone into the awkward position of needing to eliminate you to restore their honor. Apologies in feudal Japan are an art form. You don't just say, "I'm sorry," you bow deeply. You grovel, possibly composing a poem about your shame. You might even send a present like a live bird or an ornamental comb, hoping the recipient doesn't decide to turn you into jewelry. And heaven forbid your tone conveys any casualness. A misplaced word could be construed as sarcasm, rebellion, or moral taint. Silence is typically the safest option. Even humor becomes a balancing act. A misplaced laugh about the wrong subject might be offensive. Laughing alongside an influential person could suggest an inappropriate mutual status. That's how individuals find themselves mysteriously relocated to the far northern reaches. Therefore, yes, technically, you are free to speak, but in reality, you nod, smile, and wish your thoughts remain tucked away. In feudal Japan, loose lips don't merely sink ships, they plunge social standings, reputations, and occasionally entire bloodlines into crisis. When it comes to fashion in feudal Japan, it's not about personal expression. It's about ensuring everyone recognizes how inferior you are at just a glance. Clothing doesn't reflect who you are. It signifies your rank, purpose, and whether or not you're authorized to carry a sword without fear of being tackled by a samurai. Let's start at the top. Samurai don layers of silk robes, sometimes armored, always dignified. Their outfits must be artfully arranged to signify their status. Deep blues, muted browns, and the occasional bold red embellishment create an elegant, ominous impression, whispering, "I've taken lives for lesser breaches of fashion." Of course, samurai swords, known as daisho, are more than just weapons, they're badges of authority. Unveiling one in public is reserved for urgent situations. Wearing them incorrectly. A swift path toward public correction via sharp instruments of defiance. Conversely, peasants opt for cotton and humility. Brown, grey, and beige fill your closet, not from minimalism, but because dyed fabric drains resources. You labor in mud, say yes, you didn't choose this path. Yes, these are my only sandals. Merchants adorn themselves in finer materials because they have money. Still, being ranked socially beneath samurai and peasants means they keep it modest, not too lavish, just silk enough to avoid attention from an indifferent samurai patrol. Artisans and craftsmen dress neatly yet modestly. Their clothing is durable, skilled, and, above all, discreet. Drawing attention is seen as a character flaw. Then we have women, who must navigate the fine line of grace, obedience, and the symbolism of layered clothing. Hairstyles imply meaning, kimono patterns reflect the season, and if you wear a color suited for another festival, congratulations. You've shamed your household, possibly starting neighborhood gossip. In summary, what you wear isn't merely about clothing. It indicates status, ritual, and remaining above judgment by both heaven and your mother-in-law. But reality, not so much. In feudal Japan, love is an unachievable side quest. Marriage revolves around alliances, social standing, rice taxes, and avoiding embarrassment for your ancestors. If you're a peasant, your marriage is orchestrated by your parents or possibly the village elder. Romantic compatibility is hardly a topic. Rather, sturdiness and healthy teeth reign supreme. For samurai families, marriages double as political tools. Your partner is chosen to strengthen clan alliances, secure land, or pay off grudges with lavish gifts. The aim isn't happiness, it's stability, preferably one that remains intact come harvest season. Women often have limited say. A samurai's daughter might wed at the tender age of 15, mastering calligraphy, etiquette, needlework, and the art of silently bearing disappointment. Her primary role is to give birth to sons, serve tea, and avoid developing feelings for the flute instructor. Actual romantic love, filled with stolen glances and passionate proclamations, is delegated to poets, theatrical performances, and vexing ghost stories. If you wish to experience it, you'll need to witness a no-drama production about two doomed hopefuls who morph into mist. Should you attempt to escape your marriage structure? Good luck. Adultery risks exile, disgrace, or a sword's death at the hands of your spouse or in-laws, whoever arrives first. For samurai, courting a concubine is prevalent, yet it doesn't make navigating chaos simpler. It just increases the number of people to silently disappoint. Yes, people fall in love secretly, painfully, often with the wrong individuals and inevitably at the most inopportune times. In feudal Japan, love isn't forbidden, it's simply a monumental inconvenience. In this era, death isn't a far-off concept. It's your neighbor, your colleague, or your unhygienic roommate. You don't prepare for retirement, you strategize your exit. Here, death isn't viewed as tragedy, it's somehow woven into life's script. Let's examine the samurai, these honorable beings bearing two swords and premeditated death plans. If they face failure in combat, seppuku. Disgraced. Again, seppuku. What about spilling sake on the daimo's robe? You guessed it, seppuku. This ritual is public and ceremonial, performed with all the grace of a tea ceremony, albeit accompanied by visible internal bleeding. Don't assume the peasant class enjoys extended life. If you're a farmer facing a bad harvesting season, prepare for starvation. Fail to meet tax quotas. Your head might serve as a warning. Drought, plague, and bandit raids, pick your method of abrupt demise. Bandits. They exist aplenty, showing absolutely no regard for your exquisite dye and radishes. The paths outside towns are so perilous that people deter travel unless strictly essential. When someone suggests visiting your cousin next year, read between the lines, they value their own life. If a woman gives birth, the experience is like rolling dice. Complications. Tough luck. Midwives can help, but surgical options remain limited to simply pray harder and boil another towel. Should your husband disgrace the family, you might be expected to follow him not emotionally, but literally with a dagger. Keep in mind the threat of nature herself. Earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and famines abound. Japan demonstrates its artistic adaptability to natural calamities. Your home might literally disappear at any moment. The only protective measure you have is a stout roof and deep spiritual trust. An intricate mindset exists. Accept all calamities calmly, as wailing in anguish or resisting fate reflects poorly on one's dignity. A true hero bows before death, crafts a poem, and faces demise as if it's merely another awkward family dinner. So yes, feudal Japan is undeniably beautiful, but mortality threads through its fabric. In modern society, we encourage following dreams, expressing individuality, and living your truth. However, in feudal Japan, your truth is dictated by your clan. Individualism is not celebrated, it's viewed as a potential threat. Your clan defines everything: identity, reputation, and future potential. All intertwine with your family name. You exist within a complex web of obligations and expectations so dense that it may as well be a spiritual spreadsheet. Even samurai who embody pride and honor don't fight for themselves. They engage for their daimyo, their clan, and ancestors. Ideally, they perish in ways that uplift their family's reputation. Dying with honor. Acceptable. Perishing in a fashion that presents embarrassment to your clan. That's the foundation for nightmares across generations. It isn't just guilt by association, it's life dictated by association. Fancy opening a noodle shop because you enjoy cooking? Endearing. Interested in painting? Wonderful. You'll be adorning the temple your family oversees while adhering to strict guidelines in silence. One poorly timed affair or drunken incident can instill shame. you're not regarded as an individual. Rather, you're a representative, a chess piece, and a liability that walks, albeit quietly. However, if you execute your role proficiently, bow at appropriate moments, and marry as expected, your clan might just pronounce your name with a hint of pride. Thus emerges the feudal Japanese perspective on personal achievement. Having navigated the strictures of the social hierarchy, the rigid honor system, the burdens of rice taxes, congratulations. Gorgeous scenery contrasts against a climate that grows hostile. Let's begin with typhoons, violent storms that descend like irate deities, unleashing unholy amounts of rain, wind, and dismantling homes made of rice paper. Roofs peel away, roads get swept away, and the rice field labor of an entire season glides over the current. Earthquakes. They strike suddenly, unpredictably, with no alert systems. Just a subtle tremor, a fleeting confusion, then your house tilts precariously. Survive the quake and brace for the fires arising from the aftermath. Remember, everything's wooden, including the dubious choices you've made. Flooding brings its own breed of disaster, where relentless rains cause rivers to swell, transforming your village into a muddy stew. Your crops suffocate, animals wander, and your landlord still demands taxes, with interest, no less. Drought swings with equal cruelty. Long, punishing suns and parched earth render rice fields dry as a monk's humor. You pray and perform rituals, eyeing your neighbors well with growing suspicion. Winter challenges the soul, not picture-perfect snowy wonderlands but bone-chilling cold, thin blankets, and fires extinguishing before nightfall. Heating isn't centralized, it serves as collective suffering. You warm your hands over a clay brazier and pray frostbite isn't this year's trend. Even natural disasters, Japan participates actively in the Ring of Fire. Eruptions could submerge areas under ash or lava, unveiling an unsettling truth: your cherished shrine may potentially transform into a rock garden. Faced with calamities, there is no FEMA, no state relief. If your house falls apart, you're left to rebuild alone. If food decays, you must endure hardship. Even if your lord suffers losses, taxes are still a requirement. Remember, disaster-related excuses don't hold weight. In feudal Japan, power trickles down, along with responsibilities, expectations, and blame. Think yourself vital? Rethink again. Picture yourself as a peasant, the village headman dictates life. He is under the local samurai, who answers to the daimyo, who, in turn, remotely communicates his authority. The shogun is perhaps the highest authority, monitored but rarely unrestricted. Even mighty samurai, zealous enforcers of justice, aren't at the apex. Their lives revolve around serving a lord, awaiting commands, and occasionally fighting in battles they did not ignite for land they cannot claim. In practice, they possess honor but endure life as well-dressed middle management with katanas. The daimos, those powerful lords commanding provinces and militaries, could seem untouchable until the shogun decides they've become problematic. Then, suddenly, their castles undergo evaluations, letters intercepted, and heads. Even the shogun, albeit the military dictator and most influential individual in Japan, must overlook the court, clans, the economy, and various cousins wanting to poison his evening tea. Yes, he rules, but stressor means sleepless nights. Meanwhile, the emperor carries the ultimate rank yet possesses no real authority. A sacred relic cannot be touched or entirely disregarded. He blesses events, bestows names, marks eras, and once in a while writes poetry. Yet, he remains perpetually broke. This hierarchy lacks flexibility. You neither ascend nor descend. You're firmly planted like an obedient bonsai tree. Where ambition is feared, the higher you reach, the closer you come to a lethal blade at your back. Respect is mandated upward, and authority is administered downward. Orders are not merely fulfilled, they're commands. Disagreements manifest as signs of rebellion. Any hint that you presume to rise above your station isn't viewed as ambition. Rather, a death wish garbed in formal wear. No matter your station, peasant, merchant, samurai, or lord, someone above dictates your fate, and someone below waits for your downfall. In feudal Japan, education, and the ability to learn, wholly depends on where you reside on the social spectrum. Spoiler alert: if you're close to the bottom, expect invisibility cloaks to be your new best friend. Let's examine samurai children. They're generally the fortunate faction. From an early age, they're indoctrinated into reading, writing, prowess with a sword, etiquette, poetry, archery, horseback riding, plus the ancient art of maintaining an unbothered demeanor. A young samurai boy learns to create a death poem by age 14. You're still trying to master cursive. Their lessons are stringent, yet purposeful, focusing on serving, defending, and ensuring the clan isn't embarrassed. They absorb Chinese classics, Bushido principles, and practice bows worthy of divine attention. Next, consider merchant and artisan families, who receive minimal education, predominantly arithmetic, bookkeeping, and reading enough to support business transactions. You won't be studying Confucius, you'll be calculating the cost of bulk pickled turnips. Practical? Certainly. Gloriously thrilling? Not quite. What about peasant children? Here's a lesson. This is a hoe. This is rice. Now get to work before the sun beats us to it. Parents will teach farming skills and survival tactics, along with how to politely avoid a dying encounter with the tax collector. Literacy. A rare gift bestowed upon the selected few. Education is a luxury reserved for the elite. You'll primarily familiarize yourself with the scroll nailed on a tree explaining why tax rates just increased. For girls, unless you hail from a noble household, formal education is nearly non-existent, a mix of domestic skills, sewing, etiquette, tea ceremonies, and maintaining complete silence while managing the household. Should you be exceptionally lucky, learning calligraphy or poetry might transpire, provided it doesn't sidetrack your laundry folding with divine precision. In feudal Japan, education doesn't exist for personal growth. Rather, it exists to promote your role while keeping your questions to yourself, a concept that might send elders fainting into their sake. Indeed, knowledge equates to strength, which explains why it's tightly regulated. However, here's the twist: you can and will face scrutiny for absent-mindedly misdoing any detail. Culture in feudal Japan isn't just art, it's performance fraught with consequences. The way you arrange flowers, pour tea, or fold a kimono isn't whimsy, it adheres to the precise codes that have graced existence longer than you. One misplaced blossom, and suddenly, you're the village gossip, definitely not in a charming manner. Consider the tea ceremony, often portrayed as peaceful. Yet, in reality, it's an intricate social minefield. Everything stays in time. Every motion scripted. The guest must sit correctly, turn the cup twice, express gratitude, and sip in silence, all while attempting to calculate whether they've bowed appropriately. Make a mistake. Best case scenario, it becomes awkward. Worst case, it's viewed as an inherent flaw or moral failing, passed down from your disgraceful ancestors. Next, look at calligraphy, a beautiful form of self-expression, right? Wrong. Instead, it represents discipline, personality, and your spirit alignment. That brush stroke, not ink, it's a direct reflection of your mental posture. Illegibly messy handwriting could as well signify emotional turbulence and lack of reverence for proper bowing. Even creating poetry poses risks. You don't merely craft a haiku, you express it in the correct season, using proper paper while embedding references to nature and your emotional status without over-personalizing your message. Misjudge refinement, and you might as well wear a mark that states you're emotionally distant and lacking etiquette. Write something overly clever, and you can expect to be excluded from the moon viewing party. Culture is a delicate waltz. You engage not to unwind, but to demonstrate that you are composed, refined and petrified of appearing uncultured. In summary, beauty in feudal Japan isn't exerted effortlessly, it's a battlefield cloaked in silk robes. If your cabana doesn't conform, may the gods show mercy on your bonsai. After everything stated, the hierarchical struggles, relentless honor codes, and boundless rice taxes, let's face it, you wouldn't survive a day in feudal Japan. Not because of your lack of strength, not due to leniency on your part. It's simply a world structured around submission, precision, and relentless, quiet compliance. Every moment embodied a test, your posture, loyalty, and whether or not you bowed deeply enough while delivering an emotion-laden greeting. Failure brings consequences, public disgrace at worst, ritualistic death at its most extreme. In a society where expressing individuality lagged behind serving the greater whole, Artemisia of Caria exists as a historical anomaly. She existed in a time where women rarely commanded armies. Artemisia governed Hyrcanasses, a city situated on the southwestern coast of modern-day Turkey. Serving as a vassal under the enormous Persian Empire, Hyrcanasses was woven into a complex fabric of territories, often influenced by shifting regional powers. However, Artemisia didn't merely inherit authority. She seized the opportunity and transformed it into something dangerous. Her bloodline came from Greek origins, yet her allegiance lay with Persia. In a time dominated by strength and male credentials, her very existence posed a substantial challenge. Following her husband's passing, rather than retire for an obligatory male successor, Artemisia claimed authority herself. This act alone marked a low-key form of defiance. But she didn't just rule, she sought conquest. When Xerxes the Great initiated his famed invasion of Greece around 480 BCE, Artemisia did what no other woman dared. She volunteered for war, not merely sewing bandages or offering prayers from a safe distance, but commanding ships and risking death. She contributed 5 vessels, swift, deadly, and personally led them into the fierce battle. Xerxes, ruler of a vast empire extending from India to Egypt, did not just tolerate her presence, he valued her. This was a bold, audacious step. Some would label it foolish. A Greek on a Persian warship would seem traitorous. Yet, Artemisia grasped her circumstances completely. She displayed ambition not fueled by loyalty to bloodlines or empires, but played the game of survival, expertly and shrewdly. In a world dominated by men wielding swords, Artemisia didn't request approval. She forged her fleet, sailed into history, and dared anyone to halt her. By siding with Xerxes, Artemisia effectively declared war on her own people. Initially, it raised eyebrows even before her first tactical moves. The Greeks viewed her as a traitor, a queen turned mercenary, surrendering her birthright for favor at the high table of a foreign king. However, Artemisia appeared utterly undeterred, confidently participating in the campaign as though she belonged to the heart of Persian power, which, in several ways, she did. Xerxes, who surrounded himself with aggressive warriors and sycophants, found in Artemisia a rare breed: honesty, brutal, penetrating honesty. While others offered platitudes, she communicated what Xerxes required to hear. During council meetings, situated amongst decorated generals with filthy boots, Artemisia upheld clarity and strategy while rarely misjudging situations. Her recommendations were shrewd, tactically sound, and crafted with urgent warnings often ignored by the proud. Nonetheless, slipping into overconfidence, he dismissed her urgent caution. That oversight would return to haunt him. Amidst the chaos of battle, Persian lines fell apart, ships collided, and formations mimicked disarray. Within this carnage, Artemisia commanded her flagship while surrounded by both adversaries and allies seeking to grasp survival. This is where things turn truly fascinating. Chased by a Greek vessel, Artemisia executed an astoundingly debated decision. She ordered her ship to ram a Persian vessel, an ally. This unexpected maneuver led the Greeks to presume her allegiance aligned with them, hence halting their pursuit. She vanished untouched. Witnessing from a hillside, Xerxes supposedly turned to his aides and exclaimed, "My men have become women, and my women have become men." Strangely, this was perhaps his highest praise directed toward a subordinate, especially one who just sacrificed an allied ship for her own survival. But her daring decision wasn't solely about escape. It blended strategy, misdirection, and cold calculation effortlessly. She analyzed the battlefield in real time, making hasty decisions that safeguarded her crew, her ship, and possibly her own existence. The choice sparked controversy due to its brutal efficiency but paid off profoundly. While other Persian leaders suffered death or disgrace, Artemisia returned bearing the only reputable status still ingrained in Xerxes' trust. As the Persian fleet staggered back from Salamis in disgrace, with ships lost and morale in tatters, the mythical stature of Persian naval might crumbled. For many leaders, it marked the dawn of the end. Conversely, for Artemisia, it represented a peculiar victory amidst catastrophe. Amidst an unrelenting campaign, she emerged as an informed figure, someone who advised the king and escaped unscathed. Xerxes took note. Now, once back on land, bearing the scars of defeat, the Persian war machine had to regroup. In a rare display of candid trust, Xerxes turned once more to Artemisia for her sagacity, not as a sideshow novelty but as the most straightforward advisor. He confronted her with a personal inquiry: what should be done now? Ever forthright, she revealed truths other proud emperors would typically shun. Retreat. She pushed for a return to Persia while leaving General Mardonius to oversee the remaining campaign in Greece. You've achieved your aims. Athens has burned. Don't tempt fate. Incredibly, Xerxes listened. He ignored the majority of his war council in favor of one exceptional woman's insights. This singular action confirmed what many suspected: Artemisia wasn't just courageous but politically fearsome. She discerned when to engage, when to manipulate, and when to graciously step back. Her strength didn't stem from brute power but clarity, a scarce commodity among kings. Following her, the realization dawned that her ultimate trustworthiness allowed her to guard Xerxes' sons, a distinction that illustrated loyalty and judgments that could be relied upon. Artemisia, born on the fringes of an empire, positioned herself firmly at its very core. Upon returning to Hyrcanus, her status transformed from queen grappling with uncertainty towards a figure whose consequences were impossible to ignore. Her legacy began to crystallize. No longer was she merely a ruler but a commanding presence facing empires, someone who refused to blink in the face of intimidation. While her military triumphs birthed notoriety, her legacy flourished among those documenting it, particularly through the pen of Herodotus, the so-called father of history, who fortuitously originated from Hyrcanus, the city she presided over. This geographical correlation endowed his narrative with an almost eerie proximity to her life tale. He never depicted her as a caricature of feminine virtue or villainy. Rather, he painted her as a unique leader, capable, calculating, and compelling. His accounts of the Battle of Salamis spotlight not only her bravery but also her cold pragmatism. Analyzing her choices, sinking an allied ship, escaping amidst Greek distractions, and executing the tactic at its peak brilliance, Herodotus elevates Artemisia's status beyond mere commander. She transcends into a paradox, both respected and contested, enjoyed and evaluated. Yet, understand, that esteem was fiercely hard-earned. She existed within shadows cast by powerful men, such as Xerxes and Mardonius. Still, she outshone them all. While they floundered ambitious pursuits, she navigated through foresight, knowing precisely when to fight or merely vanish. Such wisdom remains rare and even more astonishing considering femininity was typically linked to fragility. Perhaps the fascination derived from her ever-complex identity. Artemisia didn't conform. Rather, she sidestepped the established cultural expectations of her period, managing to avoid the roles historians leisurely categorize. She wasn't a rebellious figure, nor a feminist, the concept of which had yet to form. Instead, she subverted the patriarchal norms solely through her skills. Over time, her influence quieted but didn't evaporate completely. It spread like whispers, articulated by men acknowledging her superiority. In war conventions, she navigated complexities with ease. In conflicts, she dexterously outmaneuvered them, and politically, she outlasted them. Despite all noise made by her male counterparts, they eventually required scribes to immortalize their legacies. Artemisia possessed something more captivating. As Herodotus closed the scroll and dipped his pen once again, he documented more than mere history. It evolved into riddles embodied by a queen. Interestingly enough, upon her death, the name Artemisia resurfaced roughly a century later, embodied again by another queen, Artemisia of Caria, likely linked through lineage, governing Halicarnassus. Though this subsequent queen never commanded fleets in warfare, she too solidified her legacy, sculpting one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus. The second Artemisia commissioned a grand marble tomb for her husband, Mausolus, who also happened to be her brother. The complexity of ancient dynasty politics never faltered in its awkwardness. This act wasn't merely a tribute to her sorrow. It was a declaration, a monument encapsulating identity, echoing the strength wielded by the original Artemisia. Historians debate whether the two figures were directly related, mother and daughter, aunt and niece, or lack any familial connection. What stands as irrefutable is that Artemisia's name became synonymous with power, intellect, and commanding rule. The foundation for all such accomplishments began with the first Artemisia, the naval commander, the queen advising Xerxes, the woman who traversed the Greek world in dual capacities as both insider and outcast. Without her inception, the name could have faded into obscurity. Halicarnassus might merely serve as another forgotten city lining a forgotten coast. Instead, it became a beacon, a place where two formidable women molded history, in starkly contrasting manners yet both exuding audacity. Separated by years yet resonating with each other, one employed ships, while the other employed stone. Both names echo back to history ever stubbornly. The narrative of Artemisia has perpetually dwelt in the liminal territory, in between empires, genders, and the tensions between history and legend. This becomes glaringly clear in the myriad ways her story has been argued, reframed, and revisited through the ages. Was she a Persian marionette? A Greek betrayer? Or merely a strategist engaged in chess while others busied themselves with swinging iron? To Persians, she existed as a loyal commander, one of the few with sound advice who fought valiantly. Xerxes literally trusted her more than most experienced generals, which echoes volumes about her political agility and composed demeanor. Within the Persian perspective, her loyalty appeared such an honor, possibly bordering on heroic. For the Greeks, perspectives grew much more intricate. Many branded her a traitor, one surrendering her Hellenic heritage in order to ally with an Eastern power. Yet, even Greek chroniclers evident in Herodotus displayed admiration for her intellect and cunning. She mirrored their own contradictions, showcasing that not all Greeks stood for Greece and not every Persian embodied villainy. Her actions defied the lines established by warfare. In contemporary assessment, scholars continue to grapple with her representation. Is she a feminist touchstone predating feminism? Absolutely, a figure exemplifying astute leadership in an exclusionary world. Her legacy enchants not due to conformity to tradition but because she shattered paradigms. In military discussions, she frequently emerges highlighted in naval histories as one of the rare examples of women commanding ships in ancient epochs. Within literary and political dialogues, she surfaces as an emblem of reasoning amid overwhelming hubris. Pop culture occasionally revives her legacy, presenting her as a figure distorted or glamorized, though she remains unmistakably timeless. And here's the raw truth. Artemisia wasn't consumed with thoughts of legacy in the way we perceive it. She didn't craft a brand or pen memoirs. Instead, she fought for her existence, ruled, and sought power, revealing the essence making her story perennial. She belonged neither to Persia nor Greece. She belonged only to herself. Over the ages, Artemisia's life followed the trajectory of classic stories, altering forms as time advanced. She transcended into myth and metaphor. Writers reimagined her as needed. Some tales painted her as a merciless seductress, while others depicted her as a bloodthirsty warrior queen. Yet the authentic Artemisia, the tactician, realist, and survivor, became mercilessly shrouded in fabrications and fears. Part of this creative distortion arises from a simple truth. Men, amid intense social constructs, struggled with her form. A woman issuing commands, unfazed in battlegrounds, challenging kings with candid truths. That concept threatened the societal norms of the ancient world. Thus, as storytellers often do with women whose strength intimidates, they rewrote her narrative. One peculiar tale suggests her despair over unrequited love led to her throwing herself off a cliff. Not the typical story of a resolute naval commander, but it aligned with narratives transforming strength into tragedy. In another paraphrase, she's depicted as a wicked schemer, more witch than queen. This is a repeated motif throughout history. When women achieve power through intellect, they're often either softened into damsels or darkened into tyrants. Artemisia experienced runs of both treatments, both failing to honor her reality. The real Artemisia ruled not from seduction or sorcery. She governed through foresight, rationale, and brutal strategy. She participated in a game dominated by men, forging her own regulations and traversing complexity. That unnerved those who came after her. They questioned what would stop another woman from achieving similar power. Even today, her adaptations continue generating distortions. Hollywood recast her as a revenge-driven femme fatale in titles like 300, Rise of an Empire. Enjoyable? Sure. Accurate? Absolutely not. Yet her name perpetuating interest conveys one unavoidable truth: her legacy possesses intrigue. The woman once feared didn't perish. She evolved into myth and memory, interrogating the ongoing uncomfortable question of history. What if more women pursued paths like Artemisia? Though she faded from the official records, her presence remained embedded, lingering like the wake left by a dissolving warship, rippling outward after her final voyage. There exist no massive tombs marking her burial site and no enduring statues bearing her likeness. Artemisia truly led an impossible existence. Retaining authority in an age when women shouldn't have reigned, she battled in conflicts where women weren't perceived as fighters. She advised where women were often silenced yet became undeniably audible. She wasn't simply tolerated, she garnered admiration, a rare privilege. This may constitute her most exceptional achievement, surviving within a male-dominated era while earning grudging respect that maneuvered even her adversaries into silence. Centuries later, her name continues to evoke paradoxical sentiments, elevated yet obscured. She may not audibly echo through history like Cleopatra or Joan of Arc. However, perhaps this is fitting. Artemisia didn't pursue legendary status, she sought tangible outcomes. She didn't embody mythic beauty or tragic romance. Her story unfolded not in poetic prose, but within the tension of war rooms, the confines of ships, and within the knowing glances exchanged with a king poised to listen. Today, her tale incites critique, not merely as a chronicle of a woman in a male-dominated sphere but serves as a reminder that bravery doesn't solely reside with those donning crowns or lifting swords. Sometimes, courage lingers at the edges of influence, commanding difficult conversations and sailing headfirst into chaos. Artemisia didn't require rescue. She didn't necessitate rewriting. Rather, she deserves remembering for who she was: sharp, dangerous, and brilliant. In an empire designed by men, she navigated her own path through treacherous waters, against prevailing cultural standards, and amid an uncertain warfare backdrop. As long as ships continue to sail and history commemorates those brave enough to speak out when silence offers safer refuge, Artemisia of Caria will linger, undeniably alive. Before lenses and satellites, before Copernicus initiated a cosmic reorganization of thought, humanity possessed merely two tools for unlocking the secrets of the skies: naked eyes and stone. Strangely, this sufficed. Across ancient civilizations, humanity gazed upward not just in marvel but with intention. The stars weren't mere adornments, they doubled as calendars, compasses, divine beings, and prophecies, giving rise to the oldest vocation known, astronomy. Long prior to possessing a name, astronomy proved mandatory. Farmers needed alignment for planting, sailors needed guidance for journeying, priests required knowledge on the timing of the correct rituals at the appropriate celestial moments. Astronomers, often indistinguishable from priests, kings, or mathematicians, were the community's go-to figures. How was such impressive knowledge obtained without telescopes? The ancient civilizations built temples, not purely for worship but specifically for observation. Significant structures, like Stonehenge in England, Nablea in Egypt, and the Great Pyramids in Mesoamerica weren't merely tombs or altars. They functioned as observatories, meticulously aligned to the movements of celestial bodies. Many were intentionally crafted to capture specific sunlight patterns during equinoxes and solstices. The Great Temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak in Egypt, for instance, oriented itself so the summer solstice sunlight shines directly between its pylons. The Maya, through efforts at Chichen Itza, revealed El Castillo, a pyramid capable of casting a serpent-like shadow slithering down its steps during each spring and autumn equinox. In India, vast stone instruments like the Jantar Mantar allowed astronomers to accurately track celestial body movements. They weren't mere coincidences, they were deliberate feats of cosmic engineering. These ventures were not isolated incidents. Across the Andes, the Nile Valley, Babylon, and Beijing, humans developed structures with celestial bodies in mind, immersing stone with starlight. The skies weren't merely observed, they were meticulously measured, plotted, and integrated into their cities' foundations. Long before glass granted enhanced vision to the heavens, civilizations noted their rhythm with astonishing precision using stone, silence, and astoundingly accurate systems. Occupying the sun-baked plains of ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians recognized not just the stars but the framework guiding their lives. Circa 3000 BCE, they refrained from merely narrating stories about the universe, they structured their life around them. To the Sumerians, the sky represented structure rather than randomness. They viewed it as a cosmic roster, tasked with deciphering its language. These early astronomers established principles that have led to our understanding of celestial mechanics. Through observing the sun, moon, and planetary cycles, they noticed these movements weren't chaotic, they behaved systematically. This comprehension gifted them one of the earliest calendars, dividing each year according to the lunar cycle. Imperfect, yes, yet remarkably functional in tracking agricultural and ritual milestones. Among their achievements, the Sumerians provisioned us with the sexagesimal system, the base 60 countdown we still utilize today to reckon minutes, seconds, and degrees. Every time you glance at a clock reflecting 60 minutes within an hour or 360 degrees in a circle, you echo their ancient mindset. Although they lacked telescopes, they constructed ziggurats, step towers reaching the heavens. From these elevated platforms, priest astronomers meticulously recorded on clay tablets, noting when Venus appeared on the horizon or documenting how the moon turned crimson during an eclipse. Their titles as Umanu, learned ones, combined the roles of scientists and spiritual guides. As time advanced, specialized astronomers within the Babylonian civilization took the Sumerian observational cumulation and amplified it significantly, prospering around 1800 BCE. By then, Babylonian astronomers weren't merely spectators. They embraced prediction. Eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and retrograde actions became logged, documented, and anticipated with impressive regularity. These observations weren't based on speculation. The Babylonians combined the Sumerian observations with mathematics, charting the locations of celestial bodies on clay tablets known as Enuma Anu Enlil and Muapan, some of the earliest astronomical texts remaining in existence. They weren't scripting fables but rather systematically documenting raw celestial data. They meticulously outlined when Venus rose, how long it gleamed, and when a solar eclipse might occur. These tablets came to symbolize the world's inaugural almanac. Notably, they discovered a mechanism for predicting lunar eclipses by recognizing the Saros cycle, a patterned duration of about 18 years causing eclipses to recur. They might not understand the why, but they recognized the mechanics worked, a vital tool for a culture merging divination with astronomy. Foreseeing cosmic happenings delivered him immense power, both spiritually and politically. While Greeks often receive credit for creating the zodiac, the truth reveals the Babylonians executed it first. They fragmented the sky into 12 segments, each linked to a constellation, establishing the groundwork for zodiac signs that endure today. What distinctly set the Babylonians apart was their mathematical integrity. They closely documented planetary motions, even retrograde movements, using arithmetic methods, eschewing geometric principles, which emerged afterward. Their mathematical accuracy sufficed for practical purposes, an adaptation aligning more with their ancient observations. In addition, they perceived the universe symbolically, a ledger articulating patterns, a monumental mechanism comprised of recurrences. Their astronomers didn't merely serve as priests, they emerged as trailblazing scientists dedicated to translating the cosmos in symbols and figures, guardians of knowledge. While the Babylonians examined the skies, their Egyptian counterparts firmly rooted their civilization in astronomy, quite literally. Within the Nile Valley, astronomy morphed from mere curiosity into a life-saving necessity, with one single star, Sirius, emerging as pivotal. The Egyptians observed an extraordinary celestial event. Each year, just before the Nile's annual flooding, the star would reappear at dawn. This phenomenon, attaining the term the helical rising of Sirius, became foundational for Egyptian calendars, a necessity rather than poetic preference. The Nile's inundation determined critical agricultural patterns, and misjudging the timeline could mean severe famine. Accordingly, the Egyptians devised a 365-day solar calendar, sectioning it into 12 months of 30 days plus 5 festival days, remarkably close to the calendar we utilize now, well ahead of Julius Caesar's interventions. However, the Egyptians didn't stop with Sirius. They systematically tracked the sun, moon, and stars from their temples. Many temples aligned with precision toward celestial bodies. The Temple of Karnak, for instance, drew sunlight exactly through its axis during the summer solstice. Other temples synchronized with rising and sinking of revered stars, while the pyramids, most notably the Great Pyramid of Giza, constructed around 2560 BCE, achieved alignment with cardinal points. Potentially directed toward specific stars, possibly Orion and Sirius, the pyramids reflect hints of celestial connections to the pharaoh's afterlife journey. Not mere burial edifices, they exhibit cosmological engineering. Egyptian priests served dual roles as astronomers, observing the skies not only for proper timings of rituals but also for signs, omens, and divine messages. Astronomy, theology, and governance amalgamated. Ruling Egypt necessitated an understanding of the heavens. Rulers were seen as cosmic intermediaries while every major political or religious occasion synchronized with celestial counterparts. To the Mayans, eclipses, solstices, equinoxes, and cycles of Venus didn't just inform, they legitimized power. One significant achievement involved tracking Venus. They noted its disappearance and reappearance within a pattern spanning 584 days, threading this rhythm into both their martial rituals and calendrical systems. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving manuscripts from pre-Columbian times, contains an extensive table tracking Venus across centuries, diverging merely by 1 day. Moreover, the Mayans cultivated laced long count calendars capable of mapping dates across millennia. Their reckoning of a solar year boasted impressive precision approximating 365.20 days, comparable to today's standards. Their comprehensive systems flourished so thoroughly that multiple calendars ran concurrently, such as a 260-day ritual calendar and a 365-day solar calendar. The El Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza lacks glass ceilings but features a stone genius, constructed with windows and positioning enabling Mayan priests to chronicle Venus and the Sun's movements. The staircases and shadow effects also anchored timing with equinoxes, epitomized by the famous serpent shadow spiriting down El Castillo each spring and autumn. The Mayans didn't merely observe the heavens, they interwove their entire civilization with stargazing. Their kings ruled by cosmic rhythms while their temples arose harmoniously with solstices, and wars surged alongside Venus's cycles. They transcended interpretation, transforming cosmic events to direct their societal structures. Moving towards ancient China, its astronomy functioned as both a scientific and political obligation, with emperors, regarded as sons of heaven, governing under the mandate of heaven. Astronomical interpretive significance could revoke power if divine messages signaled discontentment, making the study of celestial occurrences both revered and necessary. Around 2000 BCE, Chinese astronomers meticulously tracked celestial events, numbering comets, novas, eclipses, sunspots, and planetary activities. Many records expand through works found in texts such as Shi records of the Grand Historian alongside the Book of Han, still referenced during current scientific discussions validating ancient astronomical phenomena. Remarkably, they documented the supernova explosion in 1054 CE, visible in daylight for over 23 days, a stellar event recorded with impeccable precision, where modern astronomers subsequently utilized the findings to establish remnants recognizable as the Crab Nebula today. However, Chinese achievements synthesized not only meticulous interpretations but also mechanical innovations. Devices such as armillary spheres and gnomons, shadow casting rods, facilitated measuring the sun's altitude and celestial positions. In fact, working water-driven celestial globes and astronomical clocks flourished among Chinese inventors centuries before their European counterparts approached similar technology. Their astronomers structured the heavens into 28 lunar mansions, a concept mirroring Western constellation ideas, employing the system for navigation and tracking time. They additionally developed a dual lunar-solar calendar, intertwining lunar months with solar years, remaining in practice today to establish traditional holidays. Decades later arose a key improvement surrounding eclipse reconstructions, where they not only predicted solar and lunar eclipses but often associated them with dynastic omens. If an eclipse transpired and the emperor hadn't been advised in advance, it wasn't just a failure of the astronomers, it hinted that the emperor may have forfeited his celestial mandate. Therefore, astrology didn't merely echo philosophical thought, it was foundational to governance, divinity, and national endurance. Stars became more than timekeepers, they dispensed truth, and empires leaned in to discern their meanings. Within ancient India, astronomy never existed as a separate entity, but instead melded seamlessly with philosophy, ritual, mathematics, and mystique as a philosophical discipline. Known as geotissia, or the science of light, Indian astronomy commenced as a method for determining auspicious initiation times, evolving into one of the most mathematically sophisticated celestial observation systems during antiquity. The earliest mentions of celestial occurrences appear in the Vedas composed around 1500 BCE, referencing solar cycles, lunar infusion, and planetary navigation through dividing the skies into 27 nakshatras, significant lunar demarcations forming the foundation of early Indian celestial documentation. This celestial navigation links the spiritual with analytical models, crafting the basis for astrological charts and calendars still actively utilized in India today. Indian scholarship didn't merely emphasize poetry, it embodied tremendous precision. Ancient scholars formulated models for the solar year even exceeding accuracy compared to the Julian calendar instituted later by the Romans. The Surya Siddhanta, a foundational astronomical composition compiled around 500 CE, describes the axial tilt of Earth, elliptical planetary orbits, and even recognized gravity centuries prior to Newton's discoveries. One towering figure emerges within Indian astronomy, Aryabhata, who proposed a notion of Earth's rotation on an axial tilt around 499 CE, a rarely entertained idea in other regions during that epoch. Aryabhata also calculated the solar year's length approximating 365.358 days, just slightly diverging from modern measures while generating intricate trigonometric functions aiding astronomical calculations. Furthermore, Indian astronomers innovatively employed sophisticated symbols, decimal notation, and utilized shadow instruments alongside spheres for measuring angles and altitudes. Observatories often aligned themselves with planetary conjunctions, solstices, and equinoxes. But beyond the technical innovations, Indian astronomy radiated cosmic elegance. The cosmos existed not merely as a machinery of existence but as a cycle conveying time and space dancing endlessly through motion. In contrast, ancient Greeks looked toward the skies and pondered why. Why do stars traverse? Why do planets roam? Most importantly, could reason explain cosmic phenomena? Greek astronomy marked a pivotal juncture in humanity's relationship with celestial wonders. Rather than simply identifying patterns, the Greeks sought mechanisms. Through theorization, they endeavored to decode celestial motions utilizing mathematics, geometry, and philosophical reasoning. The foundation began with Thales of Miletus, one of the first to propose that celestial phenomena stemmed from natural interactions. Then arrived Anaximander, suggesting the Earth floated through space unsupported while postulating that the heavens possessed a spherical nature. While these ideas may sound rudimentary by current standards, they signified revolutionary perspectives for their era. Growth surged with Pythagoras, viewing the cosmos as a fundamentally harmonious system, a melody of spheres driven by mathematical ratios. His followers contextualized the cosmos into numerological understandings, establishing a foothold for theoretical astronomy. Yet, Aristarchus of Samos approached modern truth, introducing a heliocentric model proposing the Sun's position as the universe's center around the 3rd century BCE. His perspectives faced general disregard for nearly 2 millennia, yet they conveyed foundational seeds which would germinate with later thinkers like Copernicus. Then came Hipparchus, regarded as the father of observational astronomy. He constructed the inaugural star catalogue, distinguishing stars by radiance, discovering the precession of equinoxes, and generating trigonometric devices for computing celestial placements with remarkable accuracy, all without telescopes. Finally, Claudius Ptolemy emerged, known for his classic Almagest text, authoritative for over 1 millennium. Ptolemy synthesized knowledge hailing from Greece, Babylon, and Egypt into a geocentric structure illustrating planetary movements using epicycles and deferents, an intricate yet coherent framework lasting until proven inaccurate. While some Greek insights faltered, their commitment to rational elucidation transformed both scholarly discourse and practical understanding. They taught humanity that constellations weren't just arbitrary, they adhered to patterns comprehensible to the human intellect. With the Greeks, astronomy transitioned from mere observation into an academic dialogue pondered between earth and sky, between logic and mythology, reality and perception. Ancient astronomy didn't reside solely among scholarly pursuits. It sculpted agricultural practices, religious rituals, architectural frameworks, political ideologies, and philosophical beliefs. Understanding the heavens illustrated ways to venture into understanding the divine or, minimally, your intrinsic position within life's broad framework. While their frameworks varied, some revolving around geocentric beliefs, while others merged with myths or cyclical theories, all preserved one mutual attribute: a profound respect for the cosmos. For numerous ancient civilizations, the sky wasn't solely passive. It thrived, exhibiting intention and sanctity. However, over time, the telescope unveiled moons orbiting Jupiter and the phases of Venus, the marvels of sunspots and distant galaxies. Yet, the roots disseminated, anchored in gratitude. In 1803, something unprecedented occurred. A young republic barely 3 decades old acquired a territory so vast that it effectively doubled its span overnight. The Louisiana Purchase wasn't merely real estate, it reverberated as a geopolitical strike. With just a pen stroke, the United States grasped more than 828,000 square miles of terrain from France, extending from the Mississippi River all the way to the Rocky Mountains. 13 future states would burgeon from this enormous expanse of land, at a sheer bargain of $15 million, roughly 4 cents per acre. What heightens this revelation is the sheer unpredictability. No one, including the Americans themselves, anticipated it. During that period, President Thomas Jefferson anticipated securing access to the Mississippi River and the critical port city, New Orleans. The fledgling nation relied heavily on river trade. Farmers in the Ohio Valley required a route to float goods southward. Whoever controlled New Orleans maintained leverage over economic stability. Jefferson permitted diplomats to offer France up to $10 million simply for New Orleans and adjacent territories. That's it. Upon the diplomats' arrival, they confronted the Byzantine circumstances of a counter-offer, the entire Louisiana territory. Why? Under Napoleon Bonaparte, France shifted priorities drastically. The emperor entertained ambitions for a grand North American empire, but the Haitian rebellion stymied French aspirations within the Caribbean. With disease, insurrection, and rising tensions with Britain, holding on to Louisiana became more challenging than advantageous. Napoleon needed financial resources for warfare rather than swampy plains and rolling prairies. Faced with an unforeseen opportunity, American negotiators agreed on the deal quickly, even before gaining Jefferson's full approval. This wasn't solely about acquiring a port. It encompassed the Mississippi River, the Great Plains, access to the Rockies, becoming one of the driving forces at the continent's core. Jefferson received more than territory. It equated to destiny, a blank canvas for westward extension, national elevation, and inevitably conflict. As newspapers heralded the acquisition, one salient truth lay hidden: this land wasn't vacant. It thrived with numerous native nations already grazing and dwelling there, each with their own narratives, alliances, and claims. Thus, a deal crafted in Paris would reshape maps while profoundly altering entire lives across the continent. Centered in this negotiation were two notable figures. One man with a crown haunted by several challenges, Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1803, the French emperor battled conflicts on multiple fronts across Europe, the Caribbean, and his own failing treasury. And so, in an unexpected twist, he proposed selling off a third of North America to the very nation he once perceived as a political hindrance. The scenario hadn't commenced that way. Just years prior, France acquired Louisiana from Spain under the Treaty of San Ildefonso. Napoleon envisioned rekindling a French colonial empire. Louisiana served as the vital grain supplier to Haiti, then known as Saint-Domingue, an ideal colony fortified with wheat, meat, and other supplies. France didn't merely desire Louisiana, they intended to bolster sugar production. That vision collapsed amid upheaval. The Haitian Revolution, led by former enslaved individuals beneath leaders like Toussaint Louverture, derailed the colonial expectations into outright rebellion. France dispatched tens of thousands of troops to quash the uprising only to find them succumbing under overwhelming casualties, not merely from conflicts, also suffering grievously from yellow fever. Napoleon lost his top general, his military force, and the opportunity to reclaim gold from the richest sugar grounds on earth. As Saint-Domingue slipped beyond his grasp, Louisiana transformed from a strategic asset into a liability. This realization culminated into a desperate decision. Rather than fight to hold it, he sold it. In true Napoleon fashion, he made this choice swiftly, boldly, and calculatedly. On April 11, 1803, he left American diplomats Robert Livingston and James Monroe in stunned silence. He offered not merely New Orleans but all of Louisiana for a mere $15 million. Napoleon's rationale reflected simplicity. He desired to raise the United States into an upward trajectory, empowering a maritime rival, significantly undermining British pride. He didn't mend ties out of submission but rather subverted traditional notions. It was strategic. Thus, with this singular action, he relinquished his American empire while reshaping the future of a nation he barely valued. The land had become an imperial afterthought, while it metamorphosed into a meaningful starting point for America's expansionism and reconstruction of native sovereignty across the continent. Long envisioning an agrarian republic, Jefferson yearned for a collective of sovereign farmers flourishing amidst their rich soils, bound by liberty and civic equality. You'd assume the purchase represented an aspiration realized, but instead birthed a constitutional conundrum for him. Jefferson maintained strict interpretations regarding the Constitution, believing the federal government should exercise explicitly stated authority. Interestingly, nowhere within the document did it delineate a pathway for purchasing foreign territory. There existed no framework enabling an administration to augment its approximations through such a monumental acquisition. This junction created uncertainties for Jefferson. The opportunity represented a colossal opportunity, stretching from the Mississippi River to the Rockies. Could he, a person suspending federal encroachments, maneuver the Constitution to endorse an acquisition of such monumental breadth? Privately, he considered suggesting an amendment for the purchase's legitimacy. However, political pressures loomed. Delay could give Napoleon an opportunity to reconsider, or British forces might pounce on the acquired territory before an agreement finalized. Therefore, Jefferson paradoxically embraced implied powers, the very principle he initially criticized Alexander Hamilton for advocating many years ago. He rationalized the land acquisition as actionable under the treaty clause permitted for the president, with Senate endorsement. Swiftly, the Senate ratified the agreement in October 1803 with overwhelming support. While privately contentious, Jefferson defended the maneuver as a life-or-death necessity for the nation's future. Henceforth, Jefferson, the constitutional purist, became the predecessor architect of the most significant peaceful land acquisition in U.S. history. Critics did not overlook this dilemma, labeling him hypocritical. Yet Jefferson framed the paradox as an essential compromise, believing his actions could preserve the republic instead of dismantling it. In doing so, he established a strong precedent whereby the federal government could acquire land via treaty, despite lacking clear constitutional backing. That precedent would gain traction again with acquisitions of Florida, Texas, Oregon, Alaska, and Hawaii. The landscape transitioned from a coastal republic clinging to the Atlantic shores into a continental power reaching boldly into the uncharted future. Culturally and politically, the purchase evoked an evolution, the birth of an American myth in frontier spirit. The territory became synonymous with narratives of rugged settlers, audacious explorers, and a world abundant in potential. Yet, intertwined with each pioneer's dream exists a haunting backdrop, a native nightmare, rich with memories of lost lands, breached treaties, and communities pushed into exile. Economically, the ramifications proved staggering. The Mississippi River transformed into a critical artery, vital for commerce. Urban hubs like St. Louis, New Orleans, and Kansas City blossomed into essential trading posts, fertile fields matured into agricultural acres, while discoveries of precious metals, silver, and other resources turned portions of the acquired area into engines powering industrial advancement. Yet deeper examinations reveal lurking contradictions woven into the fabric of the transaction. This purchase manifested numerous American ideals: opportunity, growth, autonomy, but also embodied the nation's gravest failures: dispossession, slavery, and aspirations of imperial dominion. The tale unfolds a narrative rife with triumph and sorrow, ambition and amnesia. It crafted the United States into its present form, yet simultaneously compelled a reckoning still pervading contemporary discussions over land rights, tribal sovereignty, and reparatory justice. While the land exchanged in commerce seemed obtainable, the genuine costs remain unfulfilled, measured in lives lost, cultures uprooted, and landscapes transformed beyond recall. Ultimately, the Louisiana Purchase served as more than a mere transaction. It was an event defining a moment, transforming American identity from a tentative republic entwined along the eastern seaboard into an emerging empire, stretching toward the unexplored West. The ink dried in Paris, yet its ramifications rippled across prairies, rivers, and lasting generations. For the United States, this represented possibility, sparking a new national confidence, a belief that expansion became not just desirable, but unavoidable. That conviction solidified itself into the framework of policy, establishing manifest destiny, eventually steering the United States toward the Pacific and beyond. It also cemented an emerging pattern of power based on territorial acquisitions, mass evacuation, and stripping away paradigms of sustaining life. The West materialized into an ambition no longer concealed. It became a target, inviting settlers, speculators, and politicians to seize opportunities by uprooting established identities. For indigenous communities, this shift meant catastrophe. The lands they inhabited and fought for lay beneath a pending invasion, not from an invading army, but rather through the decisions of distant governments declaring ownership on acquisitions they claimed to have purchased, sans consultation or compensation. Once sovereign nations, they found their identities diluted, their historical claims subverted. A day turned from self-governing autonomy into subjects of an expanding republic without their agreement. Jefferson believed assimilating Native Americans into American ideals was paramount, a sentiment suggesting coercion in exchange for forced relocation. He articulated privately that as settlers trudged westward, native people would also head westward or perish. While it wasn't formally termed removal, the idea was crystallizing. This incessant pressure heightened after Lewis and Clark's expedition reported back, spurring exciting opportunities and abundant resources to stimulate settlement. The federal government sought treaties, often fraudulent or aggressive, crafting agreements to gain authority while relegating tribes further west, even enforcing under military duress when necessary. The Louisiana Purchase marked a turning point towards a new demographic push into the U.S., long before it solidified as manifest destiny. This concept arose from the commitment that America ought to preside over the entire continent, its legal backbone rooted in this land deal, while its spiritual implications gravitated toward the lives and territories of native nations. For indigenous communities, the Louisiana Purchase represented more than a mere exchange. It embodied an intrusion, not merely marking their boundaries anew but erasing acknowledgments toward the succinct territories existing before the European-induced inheritance.